Hello and welcome to Sounds Heal podcast. I am your host, Natalie Brown, and thanks so much for joining me as we continue to explore the fields of sound healing, sound therapy, and generally the use of sound for health and wellness. Today, our guest is Marla Leigh, who is one of the world's few professional frame drummers. And she's also a Grammy-nominated percussionist and flautist, and is an internationally recognized educator, performer, and composer. She's the CEO of Frame Drum Academy, and which hosts two signature programs, Frame Drum 101 and Frame Drum 202. And she has students all over the world. And in this conversation, we talk really about the way she balances technical and spiritual aspects in her drumming and teaching. We talk about improvisation, spontaneity, the role of joy in playing, and also healing, the qualities of drumming as a healing instrument, as a way to get yourself in sync and aligned and harmonized, and also why drumming is important right now, so important right now. And so it was really a pleasure to speak with Marla. This podcast is sponsored by the Om Shop and Spa, located in Sarasota, Florida, and also online at the omshop.com. They have the country's largest showroom of crystal bowls, vibrational tools, and really a wonderful place if you're looking to up your level of sound healing tools. They're a great resource as well. They will help you figure out exactly what you need if you're looking for a particular note with an instrument. And so please check out the Om Shop and Spa, and thank you so much to them for their support and sponsorship of this podcast. Please enjoy this episode with Marla Leigh. All right, Marla, thank you so much for joining me and for your time today. I want to start off just by asking you a bit about your background, especially for those listeners that don't know about you. Childhood influences. I know you have a musical lineage, just anything you want to talk about those early years diving into music.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be a part of this and share my passion and love for music and healing with the world. Well, I feel, my younger years were bittersweet. I feel really fortunate that I come from a very musical family. So my father was an opera singer and a doctor, and my mother was a piano player. My sister was the older sister who played music, and I always wanted to do everything that my sister did. So I started music very, very young. I started piano lessons at 3. And 46 years, 44 years later, I'm still studying music. But I really went to music my whole life as a place of healing, and it actually really started young. I'm very grateful for those early years, just having the piano to go to as a place that I called home, that I didn't know. It was just there, and it was a lot of fun, and it just sounded fun and I enjoyed it. But there was so much more going on than what I had known. And to be quite honest, my mom died when I turned 4, and I was on that piano all the time. And my dad would be like, I want you to write letters to mom in heaven. And instead of letters, I wrote her songs on the piano. And we would record them and bring them to the mailbox every Sunday. But I really felt like that connection I had at a young age with music for healing my heart. Although I didn't know she was gone. She was in a place called heaven with clouds and butterflies. And, so it started at a young age, and it's never stopped. Really, it's still like the balm, the healing salve for my heart, and I'm so grateful.
Yeah, so it was really a way to express and kind of work through grief in a way. Initially, just being able to communicate and express yourself through song. And when did more of the technical training happen? I know both on flute and drum. When did those come in for
Well, I
you?
started on piano, actually, technically. I grew
Yeah.
up in Rochester, New York. So, Rochester, New York is home to one of the best music schools, conservatories, the Eastman School of Music. So, I had Eastman qualified teachers my whole life. And my sister was a very good musician. And so, I wanted to be like her. So, I started at 3 piano lessons. Um, and then I would go to these band concerts for my sister, and she'd play the clarinet, and I loved this long silver thing. I was like, I want to play that. So I actually started flute lessons early. You're supposed to start in fourth grade. I think I started in third grade. And my teacher had bad breath, and I was so sad because my flute always. And so I quit. I was like so excited to play the flute, and I quit. These are funny stories, but anyway, so I decided that I want to play the flute so badly that I would bring mints to my classes. So at fourth grade, I started again, and I brought mints to my teacher. But I continued with the classical flute all through high school, and also classical piano. And I always wanted to improvise, and my teacher wouldn't. They would be like, "No, we don't do improvisation here," and I was like, "All right." So I was really into playing the classical music, and flute was my baby. I really fell in love with the flute in high school, and was writing my own songs, and was doing all these in the classical world. When you're studying music, I'm sure you remember this. You do these competitions, these all states, and I was really into that, and I got really into classical music. But I decided I really wanted to do jazz and improvise. So I started my music education in college as a music teacher. Uh, I was studying to be an educator, and then I decided to focus on performance on the flute. So I went to this. I transferred to a school called Cal Arts, which I just heard that you almost went to, and I had no idea I was going to be a drummer. I was on this road to be a composer and a jazz flautist, and then literally the first month of my school, they had a concert with all of the professors, and this man named John Bergamo. He just looked so cool. He had all these drums, and I was like, "Wow, what are these drums?" He goes, "Just sit and listen." And it was a very special moment that I'll never forget, because when he started playing those frame drums, I had the chills, and this like, oh no, what's that instrument? And I fell in love, and he was like, well, you're a student here. You can take private lessons with me, even though you're not a percussion major. And so, I started taking frame drum lessons with him, and then I started taking tabla lessons and African drumming lessons. And all of a sudden, I ended up getting a master's in percussion. So I really followed the muse, and I'm still obsessed as I was back then. It's amazing to just be bitten by the bug of this gift of music.
Yeah, where do you think that natural um, like drive for spontaneity and improvisation came from? Was that just really natural, like all the way back to making things up on the piano? And was jazz, in an academic setting, the easiest way to get into that? Or can you talk a little bit about improvisation for
Well,
you initially?
I think improvisation is important for everybody. I think everybody should, like, I hate the word should, but everybody, I think it's important for humans to be in the world of improvisation, right? If we live our life every day, we go down that same road, we eat the same food, it's like we need that spark of creativity. So improvisation to me means creativity, whether it's cooking a cool meal that I'm making up, or coming up with a nice rhythm that I've never played before. So, I have deep respect for the classics, for the classical music. Um, and I think it's really important to study tradition. So, in the percussion world, with my instrument that I'm a specialist in, the frame drum, we have rhythms. We have all these wonderful traditional rhythms from around the world. And I love playing that, but I also really love coming up with my own rhythms. I have to. I can't just play what other people have done. Um, and it started as a little girl, as I said, I loved, my favorite thing to do, literally, I have these pictures of me in these little like tutus on the piano. I don't know where they are, but I'm like 3 years old in this like tutu, like playing the piano. And I love to just play. And I felt this like sense of wonderland, starting on the piano, and then on the flute, and now on the drums. So, in my students, with my students, I always like to encourage, you studied the technical, you studied the tradition, but you also add in the element of spirituality and creativity. There is definitely a spiritual aspect in studying the technical and the traditional music, but there's a whole other spiritual element when you dive into the world of composing and creating your own rhythms, your own songs, your own meals. So I love that world. And two of my main drum mentors, they also were very strong in improvisation. So I went from the classical flute world, which you understand, where we don't improvise, to having two mentors that were very respected. One is not alive anymore. One is John Bergamo and Glen Velez. John has passed, but Glen Velez is still around. They were my two main influences for over a decade, like studying with them. And their whole thing was improvising, and I was like, yes, I finally found teachers who understand, and I find it's challenging for the people who come to drumming from a classical background, from a classical music background, because they have a hard time opening up and improvising, and I totally understand. And then I tell them to imagine they're playing for their dog. Imagine. I mean, are you feeling this, right? Like, how are you with improvising now? Because I know you told me you have a Suzuki background. So how is
Yeah,
it
absolutely.
for you?
I think that's where the joy comes in, doesn't it? I mean, I think it's fantastic to have the technical background and really be able to play whatever you want in a skillful way. But then to just let that go, like, how do you feel today, and just how do you play it out? How do you release things? And yeah, so I think that's where the playfulness and joy comes in, rather than everybody just playing the same way. That's really how I was trained, is okay, you play this piece this way and you pass this piece once it's played perfectly. And so, yeah, for me, it was really getting away from that and getting into, well, why am I playing this? What is it really for? So as a way of expression. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's good to have the technique, because then it allows you to have this sense of freedom in your playing.
Right.
Whatever it is. Like I'm also really into cooking, and I do not like reading recipes. And it's like, if I would only read the recipes. So now I look at it like, okay, I read the recipes. It's like learning your drumming technique or your violin technique. You get the techniques, and then when it comes to improvising, you just kind of put it together. Maybe I will put, sugar in my chicken soup. Just kidding.
Yeah, why not? Give it a try. See what happens. Yeah. Yeah, that's wonderful. So, with your frame drum academy that you run, is that kind of how you structure it? You teach the technique, you really get the foundations, and then encourage them to be playful within kind of a framework or structure. Is that how you present it?
Exactly. Well, I believe in a two-part practice. I believe in a spiritual and technical practice. So I'm actually a technique junkie. I'm really into technique. And one of the things I like so much about this instrument called the frame drum is that, we are still developing new techniques. So it's not like these are the four things that you do and that's it. These are the seven notes on the scale. There are, like, I'm still exploring new, we call them extended techniques. And some of them we make up, some comes from traditional Indian music, Persian drumming. And it's like, it's amazing. So it's still expanding. And so I love technique, where we get down to like the detail of where the finger is placed on each drum. And I really believe that it's important for students to have good technique, because then it allows them that freedom to play with ease and grace. So and then every once in a while, after I'm like teaching really big techniques, I'm like, okay, let's take a break. Now just go out under a tree and play, no video. And just like, so I really encourage them to balance that, like do ceremonies under the moon, full moons, new moons, just like to really have that technical and spiritual balance, which is really, really important. And when they play a rhythm, what kind of variation can they put into it, instead of just having them play what I play? What would a variation you would do? So always kind of opening that door for them to explore. Um, yeah.
Right. And just realizing that it's limitless, like you were saying, with those extended techniques and, really tuning into the heritage of the drum and the different cultures. It is truly limitless. And that's what keeps it exciting and keeps it inspiring.
Especially with the frame drum. I mean,
Yeah,
especially when we're talking, I mean, if you were to think about the violin, I mean,
sure.
they might not be teaching your extended technique in Manhattan School of Music, but like with
Yeah.
the frame drum, because it's so like it's still kind of an unknown instrument, and we really have this freedom to explore it. But I think it's true with all instruments, whether it is the frame drum or a violin, however I think it's really fun to explore new approaches to it, you know. And I mean, I feel so fortunate that I'm so passionately in love with something after being such a nut in love with it for now almost 30 years. I mean, that's crazy, right? Like you would think after 30 years of studying something intensely, you'd kind of be like, all right, but
Yeah.
I think it's amazing. So, um, and it's because there are new things to learn, and there are always new things, new avenues to go with the flow of what you're doing, and so it's endless. You can interview me when I'm 100, when we're 100, and we can both
You'll still be, yeah.
yeah, oh yeah, with the
I
sound
think that's
healing.
true. Yeah. Once you find that thing, that spark, like everything's led you to it, but once you find that thing, it's like there's endless rabbit holes, and it's just a beautiful adventure. Yeah, it really is.
Well, I know you're really into Nata yoga, and one of the amazing thing with the frame drum, it's like you can be highly technical, which is definitely something I'm passionate about, or you could just sit and play a simple one stroke and like let the resonance of the drum just do this healing on you. Or you could also put the drum over somebody's body and play it that way. Like there's so many healing portals, and overtones within the drum. It's such a powerful drum, for musically, but also for healing, for therapy and healing.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that brings in a question, what makes one way of drumming a sacred act versus another way of drumming not a sacred act? Is drumming sacred, and how do you approach it in a way that is sacred or spiritual or healing?
I think it's just your everyone's personal opinion. I could be playing a piece of music that's fully notated, and it could be sacred. It's how I feel about it. You could be playing a Bach sonata and it's sacred. It's just it's your attitude, I feel.
Yeah, attitude and intention. Yeah.
Hmm.
Now, with the tradition and heritage of drums and the frame drum, why do you think it is so relevant and influential in our modern times? Why do you think it's important right now? I see a lot of my own students joining in on the frame drum. Why do you think it's so relevant right now?
So many reasons. Well, the frame drum is has a rich tradition with women. So, for those listening who don't know about the frame drum, it is one of the only drums that was traditionally played by women. I think it is the original drum that women played years ago, thousands of years ago. And they played it in cultures all over the world for healing, for sacred rites of passages, for ceremony. And so I think a lot of people are hearing about it. More people are, waking up to this. And when they hear about, wow, there's an ancient lineage of drumming for women, this is crazy. And it revolves around ritual and healing and spirituality and connection. I'm in. Tell me more. You know, and it's quite easy to learn to play the frame drum. It's not something that you have to like spend years to get a tone. You can, I can get people playing the frame drum within 30 minutes. It's like it's an instrument that you can really get a lot of joy from without having a lot of super intense technique. And whereas like if I'm learning to play the flute or the violin, I have to figure out like where to put my lips on that head joint to get that sound. Or the violin, I don't want it to squeak like a cat. Like I want it to sound like a beautiful. So I think it's easier to play. So and people are hearing about it, and it's portable. So it's a wonderful instrument that you can bring when you travel, when you go camping. So it's an instrument that you can bring to gatherings really easily. So people see it at a gathering, they're like, oh, I want to use that for my chanting, let me get one. And so it's when I was starting out, There were not many women frame drummers at all, and now it's like a movement, and it's beautiful. It's really beautiful to see, and it's a tradition. This is an oral tradition. So we actually just had a memorable event online for one of the women named Layne Redmond, who wrote the book called When the Drummers Were Women, and she was a very pivotal woman in the tradition of frame drumming because she created this book that talked about all of the different cultures of frame drumming and showed pictures and really brought this history into awareness. And so I did a video for that, and I was just saying how like this is such a lineage based practice, and it's important when you're working with a lineage based practice to continue it on, right? To like share it, share it, and share it. So it's amazing that so many women are really are connecting to it. And for those listening, all of my teachers were men. So this is not just a women's drumming, the tradition we're working with. It's also an instrument that men play too. But I think that women now have more freedom, and they're really finding that connection with the drumming, and it's beautiful. And I think it's also a very personally healing instrument. So whether you plan on playing it out for anything, or you just want it for your own self, wellness. And right now we need it like more than anything. So I think that people are also, okay, I've always wanted to play an instrument. What is it going to be? I have a lot of students that tell me that, I've always wanted to drum, and now is the time. I don't have any goals. I just want to play for myself. And then they end up playing for their husband or their partner or their grandmother or their mother, their kids. It's in the family. So it's amazing, this instrument, and all the different ways it can be used.
Yeah, what you said there brought up two other questions. I mean, specifically with the women aspect. You did, I think it was your debut album and the video last year, Rhythms of Toph Miriam, and I'll put a link for that for people to listen and watch. Because it's really amazing the artists that you got involved, and of course the whole story behind it. Would you mention a little bit about who is Miriam and how that project came about?
Sure, with pleasure. So I was mentioning before, the frame drum it comes from an ancient lineage of women drummers. So women from all over the world played the frame drum, and in one of the cultures, the Jewish culture, Miriam the prophetess played the frame drum. And when I heard about the story of Miriam, I had the chills like you never believe, because I'm Jewish and my name at birth is Miriam, and the Jewish people believe in reincarnation, right? And I was like, and so I heard this story about what the frame drum means in the Jewish culture, and I was like, this is crazy. Basically, the meaning of it, it's called the timbrel, and it's talked about in the book of Exodus in the Torah. And in the moment, so the Israelites were slaves in the desert for many, many years. And, think about it. When you're going into the desert, what are you going to bring with you? Are you going to bring with you your frame drum? Are you going to, I will, but will you? You're going to bring water, food, So Miriam, because she was a prophetess, she saw into the future. And so she brought with her a frame drum, or also called a timbrel. And in the moment that the Red Sea split and the Israelites were freed, the Torah quotes, it says, and Miriam came along, and song and timbrel, and all the other women followed. So Miriam led women in this journey of celebration with the timbrel in her hand, the frame drum in her hand. And that's what happened, at the pivotal moment when the Israelites were freed, when the Jewish people were freed from slavery. So that's like such a powerful moment in history. So this video and my debut album is called Rhythms of Toph Miriam. It's dedicated to Miriam and also the lineage of women frame drummers. And the video is kind of like a bibliodrama of that moment. Like the first part is like we're walking in the desert, and we're just like and I depict that with these long time cycles in the music. And then there's the moment where there's the freedom, the Red Sea split, right? And that's our fire scene, and like with these beautiful, beautiful dancers. And then it's like a more upbeat kind of rhythm. And it was such a magical experience. The whole project was fundraised by my students and my fans and friends. and I ended up making a debut album. Actually, was just going to make a one song video in Israel, and then it was flowing so nicely that I recorded a whole album, and it was like it was amazing. It was such a powerful experience to record music in this land, with such history. And I really felt Miriam's presence. I really can feel that connection, and I hope to go back there to record album number two. That's that. If when they let in Americans, right now they're not letting in Americans, but that's a whole other story. But it's powerful, like I recommend reading Layne's book When the Drummers Were Women, because it talks about all the different cultures, like Cibele and the Mediterranean and the Greek culture, and all these different cultures had the goddesses, that represented the frame drum, that had frame drum in it. So it's like, it's so cool. It's like, this is my culture because I'm Jewish. But the Greeks, a lot of my students, they resonate with Cibele and who she stands for, or, there's a bunch of different goddesses that played the frame drum. So it's powerful. And, I mean, it's it's an amazing story. Yeah, it's so in Israel they play the Tof Miriam in school. It's an instrument that little kids learn, and it was just an instrument that they jingled around. But now, because of the works of some of the amazing musicians in Israel, it's become more of a professional instrument. And yes, yeah.
Amazing. What an experience, I'm sure. Yeah, and you have a wonderful musicians on that as well. And yeah, are you already kind of thinking of the next one?
Yeah, no, I actually actively am. I actually was ready to book my ticket, and then they blocked they blocked they blocked Americans from visiting. And I even was like, oh my God, maybe I could become a guest lecturer at a university, but they won't let you in unless it's for like business purposes, like a necessity business purpose. I'm like, but drumming is a necessity business
Right,
purpose.
right.
But yeah, no, I actively and I really love composing music. And what was really special this year, for the first time, I taught my students the rhythms of the song, the rhythms of Tov Miriam, the title track, and it was really special to teach that. And I love the model of composing music and teaching it. Uh, that's kind of what I'd like to do, teach my songs. And yeah, it's beautiful. There's a lot of freedom in that, but structure, right? Yeah.
Right. The balance.
The
Yeah,
balance.
absolutely. The balance. Yeah, I'm curious also, you mentioned earlier kind of the healing qualities. And a lot of people say that drums can help you get in sync
Oh yeah.
when you're feeling misaligned. What does that kind of mean to be out of sync, and how can the drum help you get more like in your pulse, in your groove?
This is a fabulous question, and I'm so happy that you addressed it. Um, so, so many people associate drumming to be a hippie thing. They imagine the guy with like no deodorant running around with the drum, eating carrots and like. So, um, there are so many proven, art health benefits of drumming, and there's been so much research done by doctors about the health benefits of drumming, and I think that's fabulous. In my Frame Drum Academy programs, we actually have a bonus module where I provide people with like 25 articles on the healing benefits of drumming that I did not write, like done by professionals, where they talk about all of the different aspects of healing that come from drumming. And so when you think about it, and you think about drumming, when you're playing with your left hand, you're activating your right brain hemisphere. And when you're playing with your right hand, you're activating your left brain hemisphere. So when you put them together and you're doing drumming, you're really like creating dopamine in the brain, because you're creating this alchemical reaction. And it changes like your states of being, to theta, can change all of that, your states of consciousness. And so this is one of the big reasons why drumming is now used as an outpatient therapy for Parkinson's, for dementia, for depression, for anxiety. It's an immediate energy shifter. So I'm a nut. I have a drum in every single room in my house, in my car. And I go to sleep with music. Every night I have to drum before I go to sleep. And it's like amazing. I don't, and that's why I like to teach my students, you don't have to have the videos in front of you. You don't have to have the music. You just pick up your instrument and play. and you will notice that it will shift your energy. Like if you're having a bad day, put a drum by your desk and just, stand up for a couple minutes, drum. You can, if you don't know what to play, you can put on some music. That's always a great way to get the energy flowing, is put on some music and play along. And it just will like shift. It's like the best addiction ever, and I want you to become addicted to it. It's like become a drum addict, become a DA, because it's so healthy for you. And I think humans are we have an addictive personality, and to find things that you can go to that not only help you, but they help your family and your community. Like, hey honey, having a bad day, let's drum, let's get the kids together and drum, instead of let's just watch Netflix and eat popcorn and not talk to each other or look on our iPhones. So I'm a big component on the health benefits of drumming. And when I used to do gigs, and I used to do more like the sophisticated gigs, right? Not just like a concert, but like more of a clinic, I would always present them with material about the healing aspect of drumming, so they understand why it's important, It's, yeah.
Yeah, I would say I can't guarantee it, but it might be the most researched instrument when it comes to healing.
I think the voice.
The voice, yeah. Yeah, you're right. The voice and the drum, though. Yeah. There's a lot of research out there, though, overall. There's a ton of research for different populations and, individuals, but, using it with groups of people too. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's great for elderly too. I mean, great for all ages, kids with autism, and then also all the way up to the elderly dealing with Parkinson's and dementia. It's and just us right now for sanity and grounding, everyday life. Yeah.
Yeah, for somebody, just getting their first drum, is that what you might advise? Is just when you're feeling a little off, maybe it's like really anxious or maybe it's really lethargic, just play the drum and see if the way that you play it can shift you. Just like our heart, if it's beating a little too fast, well, maybe you're just going to play the drum a little slower to bring it down.
Yeah, I recommend that, first of all, the investment of a drum, you don't have to buy a fancy drum. You can buy very inexpensive, like, Remo frame drum online, or whatever drum you want to get. So you don't have to think you have to have a huge fancy drum to begin. Anything works. You could even play a book, a box, a pot. I play boxes. Boxes sound really good. And then I recommend that you like turn off your lights, light a candle, really kind of change your environment, so you can really just like take a moment to like go within yourself and play. And as I mentioned before, if you need that extra stimulation, motivation, put on your favorite song, and you can even, like, if your drum is small, you could get up and dance around and play just like the basic beat, and you could sing and just really let your soul free, and have no inhibitions. Imagine that you're drumming for your dog, or if you have a kid, imagine that you are that 2-year-old, like, with a drum. You don't care. You're just playing, and like let that freedom in. Yeah. And you can journal about it when you're done with it, if you want to just really like, wow, okay, that was awesome, and I want to do that again. Yeah. And it's true, it does reflect on how you feel. Some days you don't want to play loud and crazy. You want to play soft and slow, and that's great. It's wonderful that especially with a frame drum, it has that dynamic capacity. You can play just so soft and get this incredible rebound of healing vibration.
Yeah, a lot of the frame drums come with the beater, but it seems like most of what you're teaching is with your hands. Is that a particular tradition, or do you teach both?
Well, the beater is the more shamanic approach. Yeah. It is the shamanic approach. And the beater they use that in the Bauron and in the shaman tradition. I play that, but I do not teach that. I teach finger. So I'm really into the hands, actual hands on the drum. And our fingers are, there's so many possibilities. and we play the frame drum in 3 different styles. So, it's quite amazing.
Yeah, your hands can really bring out the different tones, and different qualities, different textures, different layers. And And there's the motor skills too, and I think it really triggers some different things cognitively and muscle memory wise when you're using more of your body to play. Yeah.
It's a meditation, and that's another reason why I love it so much. We call it rhythmic mantra, right? Because when you're drumming, you are focused. You're not thinking about your Facebook status, or it's really a focused practice. And then when you add in, some guidelines, say, okay, I want to improvise in the meter of 4. You got to definitely focus more on that instead of just going blah, 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 blah. But yet there's freedom in there. So I love how drumming helps me focus. It really does. From having to learn a 2-hour long tabla composition where you're playing very intricate rhythms for 2 hours, where every rhythm is to just playing, and just being in the rhythm for 2 hours. All of it has its own beauty, and I think it's so important for us to have these practices that help focus our mind and help bring peace in our heart, and just like clear that mental chatter, especially now. I mean, oh my gosh, if I was a kid growing up and I had the phones and the text I am so lucky that I grew up in the 90s where we didn't have that like distraction, because it's so now easy to get distracted, and our minds we're just running everywhere. So we need these elements of music to help ground us and help us be present in this moment.
Yeah, I agree. It really is a meditative practice, and it also brings in the role of joy. I think that role of joy is so important when I see you play, is that you're just, you might be really focused on what you're doing, but it's almost like you're not worried about it. You've just kind of let go, and it's fun no matter what you're playing. Even if you're teaching a simple rhythm, there's just so much joy in your playing. I think that's so important.
Oh, thank you for
Yeah.
saying that. Well, I feel it, and they taught you when you were playing your violin as a little girl to always smile, right? When you're playing, right? They taught me to play, to smile on stage, but I can't hide it. Like if I am stressed out, if it's hard and I don't want to play it, I will show it on my face. So I really focus on playing music that feels good and makes me smile from my heart, and that's what you see.
Yeah. Well, lastly, I'm wondering what you're curious about right now. Is there particular research or a different style of music, or what's really kind of sparking your interest right now?
Good question. Peace on the earth and COVID free, and really just I think the world needs more healing. I feel like we have just lived through, we are still in the time of COVID, and it's just rocked our world in so many ways, and all the deaths and all the sadness and tragedy. I feel like this is such an important time for healing, for us to wake up to self-care and to caring for others. And with drumming, my love and my practice have deepened so much, and I'm very much excited to work on my next album, and add, it's going to be really focused on healing, rhythms of healing. And I'm looking forward to doing more concerts, really creating experiences for people, not just having them go to a concert, but like really creating healing experiences. I just don't know when we can create concerts because of the Delta variant and all that. But I really would love to create, experiences, more retreats and more concerts where people can have, these healing experiences with the sonic alchemy of music. And I'm very passionate about it because I think we need these healing modalities now more than ever. So that's what I'm focused on. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. More than ever. Well, thank you for the healing that you are offering the world through your drumming, your compositions, through your teaching. It's so wonderful to have learned about you from my students that are taking your classes. It's just I love what you offer, and these students all mention the joy aspect, the spontaneity, the balance of playfulness and technique, and I think it's so valuable to approach it that way. So thank you for all that you're doing. And thank you for your time on this podcast as well.
Oh, well, thank you for having me and for all of the beautiful work that you do.
Thank you.
It's beautiful that we have the similar students. I think that's really special.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe one day we could play music together, huh?
Hey, let's do that. Let's do that. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of Sound Heal Podcast, sponsored by the Om Shop and Spa. You can keep up to date with what's coming up next at soundshealstudio.com. Check things out on Facebook at Sounds Heal Studio, and you can listen to all previous podcasts as well as music meditations on the YouTube channel at Sounds Heal Studio. Be well and stay tuned.